Good morning, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. Vanchakalpadravishya kripasinnavevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Of course, if it's afternoon or evening, good afternoon and good evening. Today we have the great fortune of special guest speakers, exalted devotees from various places around the world. We have His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, His Holiness Sacinandana Swami, and Amarendra Prabhu. And we're engaged all across the world in expanding the Sankirtan movement, especially through the distribution of transcendental literature, which happens to be a very specific way in which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada saw that we could inculcate Krishna consciousness into the population of the world. Speech abstracted is the written word, or the written word is speech abstracted. And there's a way in which when people come in contact with transcendental literatures, they get the opportunity to hear about Krishna in the privacy of their own homes, wherever they may be. The book speaks to them. Our goal, as Prabhupada states, and I'll read it from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Adi Leela, chapter 9, the desire tree of devotional service, Prabhupada writes in his purport, chapter 9, text number 29, the only purpose of the preachers of the Sankirtan movement must be to go on preaching without restriction. That is the way in which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the Sankirtan movement of the world. So in this exercise that we're performing all together around the world, we're learning how to increase capacity for distributing Krishna consciousness. In fact, as we go on cooperating and finding efficiencies and also praying for empowerment, we find more and more ability and capacity.
Recording in progress.
The Krishna consciousness movement. And as we do, we also get more personal capacity for the practice of Krishna consciousness. What's more, all the various aspects of the Krishna consciousness movement are also nourished. So this is an important meeting today in which we're discussing the importance of book distribution and working together and the benefits of receiving and giving Krishna consciousness. So today we'll have our three featured speakers in the order that I just mentioned them. And if there's time for any extra announcements, we'll make those. We'll also in the chat box be putting places where you can get resources if you need them. And we'll also hear from some of the leaders from around the world and show the maps. So it's a great honor to introduce His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami to the assembly today. Maharaj, thank you so much for taking your valuable time to come on and address the devotees around the world.
Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Vaisesika Prabhu. It's just so greatly appreciated. I can't express it properly. But anyway, let me try and do something, seeing you've ordered me. First of all, let me just chant a few mantras. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All the devotees ki jai. Yes, okay, so I'm going to say just a few words for a few minutes about the benefits to us as the distributors. You know, of course, the benefits, I think generally when we talk about book distribution, we may talk more about the benefits to the recipients of the books, which is fine, but for the distributors, there's just so much benefit to distributing any of Prabhupada's books. Here we're talking, of course, about Bhagavad Gita particularly. One thing, just from my own experience of benefit from distributing, frankly, any of Prabhupada's books really, but including Bhagavad Gita, of course, is that I found in the years that I was focused on book distribution and just going out at least 6 days a week, sometimes 7, but generally 6 days a week for a good few years. That was in the UK, was that time of distributing Prabhupada's books, I would say, was the most blissful time I had in Krishna consciousness. You know, we all want to be happy. We all really, really want to be happy. And, you know, frankly, of course, you know, I've done quite a number of different services, and nowadays I do some book distribution. During this marathon, I've been doing some book distribution of Bhagavad Gitas, and it's just so invigorating and exciting to distribute Prabhupada's books. Giving a class is nice, you know, if everything sort of comes together and you're able to get into it. But distributing Prabhupada's books is just, you go into another world. That's my experience. So that's, I feel, a very important point in regards to the benefits for us as the distributors in distributing Bhagavad Gita and other of Prabhupada's books. Another thing, you know, Srila Jiva Goswami makes the point in one of his books. It's called Sankalpa Kalpa Druma. It's a very beautiful book. And he makes the point that Krishna is so vast. The way he puts it is that Krishna is like a great unlimited ocean. But, Srila Jiva Goswami says, still, Krishna never forgets even the smallest drop of service, even though he's so great. So even if we only distribute one book, Krishna will never forget. It'll be eternally to our credit. And what to speak of if we get into it and really distribute a lot of Prabhupada's books. Because, you know, I don't know if you've heard it put this way, but one way I've heard it put, and I think it's nice, is that Lord Krishna, he has his little black notebook, and a little black pen. It's just a little notebook, sort of like Krishna. Every day he goes out herding the cows, and he's got his little lunchbox, and it's just a typical sized lunchbox that children take to school or wherever. But when you open that lunchbox, it's just got everything, every type of preparation you can think of, and many you've never heard of. So Krishna has this little black notebook, that he keeps in his top pocket, sort of, and a little pen. And when you do some service, particularly something so dear to Prabhupada, you could just say the most dear to Prabhupada, distributing his books, then when you make some effort and you distribute something, your name goes down in Krishna's little black notebook with a little gold star. Yeah, seriously. I mean, it may sound a little light-hearted or amusing, but ultimately it's true. Ultimately it's true, because Srila Prabhupada appreciated book distribution so much. It's just amazing how much. So Krishna also takes it so seriously. So yes, all of you who are going out during this marathon, either full-time or sometime or just even one time, you make that effort, you distribute something, your name is in Krishna's little notebook, and once your name is in there, that's it. That's the end of your material or your life in the material world. Next stop, next stage, next step, back home, back to Godhead. And in Goloka Vrindavan, they also do book distribution. Did you know that? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But the thing is, in Goloka Vrindavan, everybody takes one. Nobody refuses. And even if they've already got 20 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, they'll take another one or two. So we can continue with our book distribution in Goloka Vrindavan. Don't worry that you're going to have to just do some other, what you might consider less exciting type of service when you go there. So another little point is that we are practicing sadhana bhakti because we somehow, by Prabhupada's mercy, we have been extracted out of the material world, like extracting a tooth. Sometimes it's not easy. It hurts a bit. And, it takes a while to settle down. So, somehow by Prabhupada's mercy, we've come to Krishna consciousness. And I know for myself, it took a little while to settle down. But once I settled down, wow, it was just the most wonderful thing, actually. Very wonderful. But anyway, we are performing sadhana bhakti. There's Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, there's Raganuga sadhana bhakti, whichever, but one way or the other, we are doing sadhana bhakti, means practicing in moving towards perfection, or that deeper qualification for pure devotional service. So, there are different activities in sadhana bhakti. There's chanting our rounds. There's getting up early, following the regulative principles. And we know that there's so many activities there. And one of the very, very important sadhanas for us is to get out of our little comfort zones and to go out and just confront the conditioned souls and give them the books. This is what Prabhupada wanted us to do in terms of preaching. Book distribution had that special priority. So therefore, the book distribution where we confront the people face to face, and we deal with the people and try to penetrate into their little materialistic worlds of consciousness and get out of our own little spaces of comfort sitting at home or in the temple quietly. It's such an important sadhana for us. It's so extremely beneficial for us to get out like that and give the people Krishna consciousness, particularly in the forms of the books. As Prabhupada said, what will your speech for 2 minutes do? Well, we hope it'll get them to take a book, because that'll be the best thing, really. Yeah, otherwise they'll walk away, and within half an hour maximum, they'll have forgotten really what you said. So those are 3 things which are beneficial for us as the distributors, as the devotees trying to give Prabhupada's mercy. Those are 3 things, benefits for us when we distribute Bhagavad Gita. So I would say try to remember those, and I pray to Krishna that you'll be very, very successful and very blissful and have a great marathon. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Maharaj. Thank you very much for giving us your advocacy, and the realizations are instilled in our hearts now, especially touching when you talked about how Krishna writes our name in his book. That's so memorable and gives the devotees so much impetus. And your appearance here today, just speaking about this and remembering all your days on book distribution has been really enlivening. Thank you very much for joining.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And now we'd like to invite His Holiness Sacinandana Swami. So good to see you, Maharaj, fresh out of Govardhan. Please go right ahead.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Neva Shesha Shunyavari Vaskatyade Satani. Hare Krishna. It is similarly very nice to see you, Vaisesika Prabhu, and also to see His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami and listen to you. And also I'm very pleased to see our Amarendra Prabhu in the little window there, and of course all the others. Now, when my eye goes to the list here down, the number of participants, it's not 10,000, it is at the moment 73, and I'm but this effort to talk about the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books, in particular the Bhagavad Gita, and talk about the benefits which both the distributor and the receiver has. This effort is something which at once goes beyond what is so important to us in this world, numbers. It is something eternal, something spiritual, like our Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj reminded us. I heard this in relationship to Ram, that he has this particular notebook, this very, very special notebook where devotees like Hanuman are inside. He has this particular thing that this is an activity which pleases Srila Prabhupada and Krishna to an extent that is so inconceivable. Alone this point makes it transcendental to whatever goes on in the world of numbers and so on. It is a very honorable activity. It's at the core of spiritual activities. It is pleasing Krishna and Guru and Krishna, and that is more important than pleasing millions of people of this world. If we have the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, that is the supreme benefit. I once saw that, or felt this. It was in '74 when Srila Prabhupada made a tour through our castle and came into the room where we translators were sitting and working at the translations from his English books into German. You should have seen his face. You should have been there and see the interest he had in every little step of the translation, including fidelity check and all these other steps which are necessary, the first draft of the translation. He inquired about everything, and he was just so merciful to those who were there. I remember I was in this embarrassing situation when he came in. I had just taken a 7-minute nap. I had my alarm clock there to make sure it would not be longer. And I had not calculated that he would come at that time. We thought he would come much later. So when he was in the room and he stood before my table, there were, I think about 4 tables in where we all worked on our particular area of translation. When he came before my table, I was lying there. So but I was awake, so I could see him under the table. It was a small table, low table. I could see his lotus feet, and I figured out, anyways, let me get up. So I rose up behind the translation table. My left cheek, I had laid down on the left side, was all red because I was lying on something. And I looked at him, looking very sheepish, but he laughed with such an abundant joy that I could see his sympathy was there, because we were engaged in translating the books, which was necessary, of course, to distribute them in Germany. So yes, Prabhupada was really keen on the translation and distribution of his books. He was really keen. He took great interest in every step, and he was very, very pleased with everyone who took part in this, even the sleeping members like myself at that moment. I have been requested to talk about 3 benefits which those who receive the Bhagavad Gita have. And in researching this, I came to the 15th chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There we have a distraught Arjuna. He is crying. He is very, very distressed, if not depressed, because Krishna had just left the planet Earth. And he had come back to Hastinapur with this heavy news, which he shared with Yudhishthira. Can you imagine someone so close to Krishna as Arjuna, and then Krishna leaves the world? How must Arjuna have felt? Arjuna dined with Krishna. Arjuna, as we hear in the Bhagavad Gita, slept on the same bed as Krishna. They were really so close that Krishna said, these 5 Pandavas are like my pranas, my life force. Arjuna, however, was the dearest to Krishna. He was a pranasaka of Krishna. This I found in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So how much must he have felt, how much sadness he must have felt when Krishna left. At that time, he had only one recourse, something he could turn to, and that was the words which Lord Govinda spoke. In the Bhagavatam, Arjuna says, I'm now attracted to Lord Govinda's instructions that relieve the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. The Bhagavad Gita relieves the burning heart, which is burning in the fire of samsara, by its cooling instructions. And as he thought about this, all the trash in his mind, the contamination in his thoughts, like depression, all this, it vanquished, it subsided. You know? And as he remembered more of these words, the pain and darkness of separation went. So here we find 3 benefits. The relieving the fire of samsara, this material desires which always burn like fire, that cannot be extinguished. That went, and he also became pacified in his mind, and all the Prabhupada translated as trash, or the contamination and unsteadiness went, and finally the inner darkness which is coming to us souls when we are separated from Krishna went away. If you want to hear more benefits which come from remembering or reading the Bhagavad Gita, I will direct you to the Bhagavatam 1:15-31, but I don't want to overload you with informations which go quickly away when we are overdosed. My dear devotees, these things are not just glorifications which we do, which we say in order to motivate us for Bhakti's devotion. These are not just motivating or encouraging words. They are practical experiences. Even today, the pain in the heart can go, the contamination in the mind can go, and the darkness can go, and we can see very clearly. Even today this can happen. This is not a pep talk like our Maharaj, Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj didn't give us a pep talk. No, this is experienced reality. Let me close with a little Sankirtan story which we here in Europe like to tell each other. So, it happened in Hungary, I believe, a few months ago, where one young man was so disturbed and so much in pain. He had so much burning in his heart, he had so much contamination or trash in his mind, he had so much, how do you say, inner darkness that he could not imagine to live on. So he went into the forest to take his life. As far as I remember, he took a loaded pistol to end his life. Now, as he was sitting there, getting ready to pull the trigger, he remembered he had not really left any note to his friends. You know, those who do commit suicide, statistics show they feel a need to write a goodbye letter, at least which is found by those who were near and dear or somewhat close. It's a psychological need to say goodbye. This is what suicide people feel. So he said, let me go back in the town, let me write a goodbye letter and leave it in a prominent place in my little apartment where it can easily be found by the police and shared later with those who are near and dear or close in some place, where I explain my action. So he went back, and on his way back he met a book distributor, and it's so nice, I remember very clearly, the book distributor gave him a Bhagavad Gita. I don't remember the conversation which took place, but I remember he went into the forest with a Bhagavad Gita. So then he again wanted to do the unnecessary activity of killing himself, but he thought, the book is there, let me just read a little. And he read in the Bhagavad Gita, and he understood, and it worked. The Bhagavad Gita worked on him. That is, again, the burning pain in his heart went. How do you say this? Negativity, the trash or the contamination in his mind went, and again he could see clearly the inner darkness went away. These are results which happen today. They happen to anyone who reads the Bhagavad Gita. You should also, as book distributors, read these. Read in the books. I remember how Prabhupada used to say to us in Germany, we were very passionate distributors. I mean, passionate in the quantities. We were quantities. Imagine there was one devotee who distributed around 900 books a day. How it is possible? I asked him a few months ago. His name is Harinamananda, and he said, Maharaj, these were times we were clearly empowered by Krishna's mercy. So yes, Prabhupada told us, who were distributing so much, he said, you must also read the books. Otherwise, soon there will be no more Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. You must read yourself. Because reading the Bhagavad Gita leaves you with the three benefits. You as a devotee will feel it, and also those who are receiving the Gita and reading the Gita for the first time. I think this is a good motivation. My dear devotees, when you go out there, you cannot say what is the result. It is beyond the ratio, is that an English word? It's transrational. The mind cannot fathom what happens. It doesn't, the mind cannot fathom what the journey of the book will be, the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes it takes a few bends and curves before it reaches the person who actually reads it, and so on. Yes, let us just inject this transcendental literature into the bloodstream of contemporary society, who really is in pain, who really is contaminated in the mind, and who suffers from inner darkness. We need to do this injection. And I'm so grateful. Not only grateful, I'm so honored to be somehow called by our Vaisesika, that Vaisesika Prabhu takes a leading role worldwide in distributing these transcendental books, motivating, organizing, making conferences, traveling the globe over. Vaisesika Prabhu, may you be blessed with good health, with good mental and physical strength, with Srila Prabhupada's unending compassion, and may you in the end reach the fulfillment of your spiritual heart desire. So that is my humble prayer. Good. These were 3 benefits from reading the Bhagavad Gita. Those of you who like to study the Bhagavatam and so on, I was reading to you from 28 to 31. Beautiful things. We could not get into the purport. You will love them. There are many nuggets, many priceless gems in this session. Once again, maybe Vaisesika, you are a very expert to write in the computer. 1, 15, 28 to 31. 28 to 31. Good. I will end here, and thank you once again, and I will continue on. I think I will continue listening. I think our Amarendra Prabhu will address us now. So, Hare Krishna.
His Holiness Sacinandana Maharaj ki jai. Thank you so much, Maharaj. The last metaphor you gave about an intravenous injection into the world was very effective. Is thinking how we have to put enough medicine in so it goes to the whole world. And deeply touching, as always, your presence and your words. Thank you very much. And I've taken those benedictions as I was wondering why I was hurrying to get on this call today, and now I know. A great reward to myself. We now have the great fortune of hearing from His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. But before we do, we'll take 2 minutes to show our esteemed guests the maps of the world and how we're doing right now, as just a short break in this speaking. So we'll look at these maps and just get an idea, an overview. We can look down and see what the various continents are doing, the devotees on the various continents, what they're pledging, and also a reminder of what our goal is for this year. So this
add it to your personal list.
This campaign we're engaged in now. Shamahini, are you putting them up, or is it Madhuri Saki?
Madhuri Saki?
There we go. So our campaign over the last several years is called Live to Give. It's the Prabhupada Marathon. You can go back to the first slide, please, if possible. And next slide. There's the expanse of the marathon is from September 11th to January 7th. Gives everyone in the world an opportunity, depending on their climate and their various schedules, to engage in this Prabhupada Marathon, expansively called Live to Give. There are resources that everyone can go for, as you'll see in that last slide, at prabhupadmarathon.com. Go back one, please. At the bottom, prabhupadaMarathon.com. Anything you need, resources, you can go there and get information about how to conduct the marathon, organize your community, and so forth. Next. We've been steadily increasing because we're working together and using the principles of organization and taking inspiration from the enlightened devotees like we are today. Next. And here's a look at the world from last year. This is 2021. 250 communities were engaged in the marathon. That is, they pledged and then they reported their scores. 55 countries. We have 7 continents to work with. Right now, we're making a documentary film about how we've introduced books to Antarctica, because that's the 7th that we hadn't penetrated yet. But now we have. Devotees innovated and found a way to get books to Antarctica. It's symbolic. Obviously, there's not that many people there, but we want to show the every town and village mood that we're going for. No section of the world left behind was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feeling. And we get to do it. We get to carry this out. Okay, next. So our global goal for this year is 3 million Bhagavad Gitas. So every book counts. Everyone can engage everywhere. Next. Here's what we're looking at in pledges so far from the world, the various continents, and keeping in mind that New Zealand and other places, the population is very small. So sometimes devotees have to wait a long time for anybody even to walk down the street. So we can adjust the way we look at, what the pledges are. They're related to per capita, or the relevance of them is weighted differently according to the difficulty of distributing in different places. New Zealand has a pledge 10,049. Fiji, which has risen from doing 1 or 2 books, now they're up at 1,030. Australia, they've pledged 16,016. Keeping in mind too that last year, almost every place smashed their pledges. They went beyond them. Next. Here's the Far East, which includes Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Hong Kong, Thailand, Malaysia. And we have up here, Madhva Purva Desh, the various deshas you see there in the upper left-hand corner. And all of them are involved and all of them are pledging to various degrees. We have pledges for 57,280 in those regions, going out in various languages as well, as was Prabhupada's design. Next. Here's Africa at 15,600. We feel Africa has the greatest potential in the world, and we're betting on Africa to beat India. It's only a matter of time. And this is our fervent prayer. Europe, and we see all over Europe, devotees engaged and pledging at 77,279. Every one of those Gitas is going somewhere, in somebody's house, office, pickup truck, wherever it may be, and having its effect. Little ticking time bombs ready to go off and give people spiritual happiness. India is the great champion of book distribution in the world. They've organized so well. We have it in 4 colors. They've divided the continent into 4, and each one has its own leadership for expanding book distribution. Their pledges are now at 2,700,000. Here's the North America, America and Canada together, pledging 168,808. And you can look down and see the individual centers. These are numerous points of light where devotees are working together as small units to expand in their own areas. South America is famous for book distribution, population of some of the most pious people on the planet, and really great leadership there. Right now, they have pledges at 10,000. Think they're in a mood of revival there and coming back to their original glory, where they were able to be leaders in the world of book distribution. Just a matter of time there also to see South America explode into the great powerhouse that it is and has been. So there you have it, a bird's eye view of what's going on in the world. That's all of us. Every one of us counts, and it's helpful to see where we're going. We have to measure in order to make advancement. Prabhupada writes in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Adi Lila, chapter 9, first the quote from Kaviraj Goswami, "I'm the only gardener," Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying. "How many places can I go? How many fruits can I pick and distribute?" And Prabhupada writes, here Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indicates that the distribution of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra should be performed by combined forces. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he laments, how can I act alone? How can I alone pick the fruit and distribute it all over the world? This indicates that all classes of devotees should combine to distribute the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra without consideration of the time, place, or situation. Let's cover the earth, everybody. Let's just do it. Hare Krishna. Now, for the grand finale, we have our example of Krishna consciousness in the world that so popular because of his energy for spreading Krishna consciousness and speaking about Krishna consciousness so expertly. Such an honor to have you on today, Amarendra Prabhu. Thank you very much for immediately agreeing every time we ask you. We welcome you to address all the devotees who are, by the way, not just in the Zoom room, but we have several other social media outlets where devotees are listening in. And we do get the recordings go on, and thousands and yes, tens of thousands of people listen to these. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear Vaisesika Prabhu, for blessing me with this honor of being in this esteemed assembly. I don't see myself in any way worthy enough to be here, but I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for considering me for this service. I feel this Zoom room is like Ramayan, where we have many Hanumans, but I come here as a small squirrel trying to push little sand particles in the building of the bridge. Thank you for having me here. And my prostrated obeisances, starting off with His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. I have felt immensely and profusely benefited, Maharaj, by your books on Govardhan and your lectures on the Parikrama, Vrindavan, Radhakund, and Govardhan. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the book on Vrindavan, the playground of God. Thank you for your contributions. And thank you, dear Sacinandana Maharaj. Such an honor and pleasure to see you here. Right from the time I read your Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name, I have been touched by your classes and your presentations on the Holy Name and your ecstatic kirtan chanting. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. And thank you, Vaisesika Prabhu, for leading from the front this worldwide revolution, grassroots book distribution revolution in this world. In the fire of material existence, you're not just extinguishing the fire of distress, but actually adding the fire of bhakti by setting everything, setting hearts ablaze, setting the movement ablaze, setting corners of all continents ablaze with book distribution. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. And to each one of you present here, all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, thank you for being here. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I was really touched by the presentations, and I really loved the point that there is book distribution even in the spiritual world. As we know, Goloka Vrindavan is the transcendental abode of Radha and Krishna's sweet loving pastimes. And Brinda Devi is in charge of sending messages through her lovely parrots, Daksha and Vichakshana. And we understand that the word Vrindavan, one means forest, and Vrinda is the beautiful, wonderful Sakhi of Radha and Krishna, who is the forest goddess, who's in charge of all the pastimes. She's like the director of the Braj Planning Commission, that commission which takes care of all the pastimes of Braja. So we can say that all the books of Srila Prabhupada, all the transcendental literature, they're none different from Vrindavan. Why? Because every page, white page, reminds us of Srimati Radharani, and the black print reminds us of Shyam Sundar. So every page of the transcendental literature is the wonderful, beautiful playground of the divine couple. And these books, starting from the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, every single book is actually Vrindavan. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. The word vraja has been used by Krishna straight in the Bhagavad Gita. And many indications of Vrindavan has been made straight in the Bhagavad Gita. Like, for example, Krishna says, Punya Gandha Prithivyamcha in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that I am the fragrance of Mother Earth. But he doesn't say why. We understand Srimati Radharani has a very beautiful name, and her name is Gandharvika. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami mention that Radharani is called Gandharvika because she adds fragrance to Mother Earth by the touch of her lotus feet. She sings like the heavenly damsels, or we could say the heavenly damsels try to sing like Radharani. And at the same time, she's the abode of all transcendental aromatic fragrances. And remembering the Brajbasis, especially the Braja Gopis, especially Srimati Radharani, Krishna says, I am the fragrance of Mother Earth. Just speaking in subtle, hidden messages. Parokshavaadam, it's called, indirect speech. So in this way, we can see that Bhagavad Gita has philosophy. It's a very wonderful conversation between best of friends, and at the same time has the entrance, the roadway to Vrindavan. We can see that the gopis of Vrindavan sang 5 songs in the 10th canto. They sang the Venu Geet, chapter 21. They sang the Gopi Geet, chapter 31. They sang the Yugal Geet, chapter 35. The Viraha Geet, chapter 39, and the Brahmar Geet, chapter 47 of the 10th canto. And Krishna tried to reciprocate with the songs of the gopis by singing one song, which is called the Bhagavad Gita, the song of God. Because Krishna cannot reciprocate to the love of the devotees. The devotees are singing 5 songs, and Krishna is singing one song in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's so fascinating that Krishna tries to reciprocate to the devotees. And what did the Brajbasis do? Chalasi yad braja charayan pashun nalina sundaram nathate padam shila trinankurai sidatitinaha kalilatamana kanta gachati. In the Gopi Geet, the gopis are talking to one another and they're saying, oh dear Sakhi, our hearts are burning in distress that Shyam Sundar Krishna, on the pretext of taking the herds of cows into the forest, is walking barefoot. And the soft lotus feet, the sole of his beautiful pink lotus flower-like lotus feet is scratched by the pebbles and the thorns and the rocks of Vrindavan. How can we help him? And the Braja Gopis sit all night and they remove the pebbles and the rocks and the stones from on the path from Krishna's home into the forest, so that the next day when Krishna walks, those stones don't trouble him. Of course, anyway, the stones of Braja are actually placed at the right place by Brinda Devi, so they don't trouble Krishna, they actually serve him. But it's the mood of the Braja Gopis that all night long they sit and they move the rocks from Krishna's home up to the forest that he's going to visit the next day. Krishna can't reciprocate with this. Next day when he walks, he sees that there are no stones, no pebbles, and it's the soft, wonderful dust of Govardhan. So Krishna feels in his heart, how can I reciprocate? How can I reciprocate to the Brajbasis? How can I reciprocate to my devotees? And therefore, dear devotees, he speaks Bhagavad Gita. Why? Just like the devotees remove thorns and stones on the path of God, Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita and removes the thorns and the stones on the path of the living entities return back to Godhead. When we are trying to go back home, back to Godhead, there are so many thorns and so many rocks and so many pebbles in the form of misunderstanding and confusion and bewilderment. We don't know who is God. We don't know where he exists. We don't know what our relationship with him is. We don't know whether he has a form, we don't know whether he's male, whether he's female. Does he exist at all? So many pebbles, so many sharp rocks are there in our heart, and they don't let us go back home, back to Godhead. So by speaking the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is reciprocating to the residents of Braja by removing the thorns and the rocks of bewilderment from the path of the conditioned soul's journey back home, back to Godhead. So Bhagavad Gita is actually Krishna's reciprocation of love to the residents of Braja. This Bhagavad Gita is the greatest gift to the world. Shripad Adi Shankaracharya has written, Maline mochanam pumsam jalasnanam dine dine sakrit gita amritasnanam samsara malanashanam. Just like by bathing with soap water, the body becomes purified. By bathing in the waters of the Bhagavad Gita, the mind and the consciousness becomes purified. There's no soap water in this world which can purify the mind, but it is the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, whose disappearance day we are celebrating today, who's the founder of the Brihat Mridanga concept, whose lotus feet Srila Prabhupada followed all his life and gave the gift of book distribution in this world. That Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his purport to Chaitanya Bhagavat, he writes that when Vaman Dev came in this world, he ruptured the shell of the material world and gave Ganga through his lotus feet. How beautiful. When Vaman Dev came in this world, he ruptured the shell of the material world by the touch of his toenail and got in the flowing of the Ganga through his lotus feet. And that same Ganga came in this world, not through the lotus of Vaman's feet in Kali Yuga, but through the lotus of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's eyes in the form of his tears. Ganga came through the feet of Vaman Dev, but comes through the eyes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the form of his tears. But dear devotees, Vaman Avatar took place in Satya Yuga. So Ganga came through the Lord's feet. And Chaitanya Leela took place in Kali Yuga. So Ganga came through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's eyes. But what about Dwapar Yuga? In Dwapar Yuga, Ganga didn't come through the lotus of the Lord's eyes or the lotus of the Lord's feet. Ganga came through the lotus of Sri Krishna Chandra's lips in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. In every generation, Ganga has come from a different limb of the Lord's body. And just like when we bathe in the Ganga, Ganga takes us back to where she came from, that is the lotus feet. If we bathe in the Ganga of the Bhagavad Gita, the sacred waters of the Bhagavad Gita, she will take us back to the smiling, beautiful, wonderful, moon-like face of Shyamsundar in Braja, in Vrindavan. This is the gift of the Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, Shripad Adi Shankaracharya says, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. If there's one scripture that we have to hold close to our hearts, that should be the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes it may seem to be a very sectarian, very narrow-minded statement, right? It may seem like that. Like even in the Bhagavatam, we see this, that Kim Anyai Shastra Vistarai, that what's the need for any other scripture if we have Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, the example given is, if you have one bike that can take you to your school or to the store, why do you need 5? If there's one bicycle that you can sit on and you can cycle your way, use that bike to go to school, why do you need 5? So if there's one scripture which can take us back to Krishna, you don't need anything else. That's the solution to all problems. So therefore, dear devotees, we see Shripad Madhvacharya, Shripad Adi Shankaracharya, so many wonderful acharyas have glorified the Bhagavad Gita. My Guru Maharaj, Param Pujyapad Srila Radha Govinda Maharaj, in one class he was explaining that before he came to ISKCON, he had read the Bhagavad Gita of Vinoba Bhave, the Bhagavad Gita of Dr. Radha Krishnan, the Bhagavad Gita of so many other Aurobindo and so many other authors. And then when he came to Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, my Guru Maharaj explains, he was thinking, I've always seen the title as Bhagavad Gita, but this is the first time I see a title as it is. So he thought to himself, does this mean that the other Bhagavad Gitas are not as they should be? And out of curiosity, he started reading. And then he explains that no other Bhagavad Gita explained the words of Krishna like Prabhupada did. And what a contribution. The original works are in Sanskrit. Prabhupada gives them transliterated in English, breaks all the grammatical rules. I can give you an example where Prabhupada does this. I'm just going to screen share for a minute. Look at this Look at this beautiful verse. Now, this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 68. We'll come to the translation, but just want to express gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. Now, look at this. The word is yaha, with an H. But by grammatical rules, the H is dropped. And this is the original one, yah. But Prabhupada takes the time out to give the original word according to the grammatical usage. And the original word is mat. But Krishna says mad. The original word is bhakteshu. Krishna says bhakteshva with a V. The original words you can see here, mam, eva, eshyati, and Krishna just gives them as evaishyatya samshaya, as one word. You can see how long a word this is. Prabhupada takes time out to break them down grammatically, gives the original Sanskrit in English, and then breaks them individually to their root Sanskrit words and explaining what they mean, and then give the translation, and then give the purport, and in the purport include the purports of other acharyas, and in the purport include so many evidences from other scriptures. Then in the purport include examples and analogies and his personal experiences. Now that's a gift to the modern time. There's been no commentator who has done that in the history of mankind. And not just that, Srila Prabhupada, being in the same generation, the generation that we live in, is speaking to solve the problems of the present times. When we read like a Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or a Baladev Vidyabhushan or the Acharyas in the past, they have spoken the spiritual principles which are eternal. But Prabhupada in his purports, he also talks about contemporary issues and how to use Krishna conscious philosophy in those situations. Talking about the translation here, dear devotees, for all those who preach Krishna consciousness and distribute Prabhupada's books, Krishna has given a benediction here. For one who explains the supreme secret, Krishna has guaranteed he will come to me. How wonderful is that? And as reference, we can have so many verses, starting with Bhagavad Gita 1868. Then we have Srimad Bhagavatam 177, the benefit of distributing transcendental message, literature. What happens? We lose lamentation in life. We lose illusion in life. We lose fear in life. And what do we gain? The feeling of loving devotional service to Radha and Krishna. What happens when we preach Krishna consciousness? Krishna manifests himself in our hearts. That's 284, dear devotees, Bhagavatam. I have been asked to give 3 proofs in the scriptures in this talk as to how preaching Krishna consciousness, either through giving katha or distributing books, how does it benefit us and where in the scriptures are the benefits given. So just to recapitulate, this is Bhagavad Gita 1868, Srimad Bhagavatam 177, then Srimad Bhagavatam 284, that those who give this message to others by hearing, chanting, and preaching and distributing, Krishna manifests himself in their hearts. Not just that. Then we take a few more examples. Those who hear this message, those who receive these books, what happens? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, if they accept this philosophy or they accept these books with faith and without envy, immediately Krishna says they become free from sinful reactions. At that point, when they touch the book, I promise, that's the start of their good fortune. And if they follow that path, Krishna says they will attain the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. Can we see this beautiful translation of Srila Prabhupada? Let's pay attention to this. Krishna says, Shubhal Lokan, in the plural usage, that a person who accepts Krishna consciousness will attain spiritual planets. Not the spiritual planet, but spiritual planets. What does that mean? It means Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recruits that person in his army, and from planet to planet, as Mahaprabhu performs his pastimes, this person gets a chance to participate in the auspicious planets in the plural usage. How wonderful is that? This message that is being distributed, another reference, Srimad Bhagavatam 12:50, dear devotees. This message, when distributed, when heard, when read, which is so attractive, so relishable, ever fresh, what does it do? It causes a festival for the mind and dries up the ocean of misery. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Another reference, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 7, Text 2. The benefits of speaking, hearing, sharing, distributing Krishna Katha. What happens when we hear or read these messages? The dirty things in one's mind vanish. These pastimes are so attractive that they are pleasing to the mind and the heart. It uproots all material things, and one develops attachment for Krishna and friendship with the devotees who give us the contribution of Krishna consciousness. All that we are looking for is right here. All that we are looking for. Krishna talks about book distribution and preaching in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, text 1. How does he say that? Let's hear this out. Krishna says, Abhayam sattva samshuddhi, jnana yoga vyavasthiti, danam damascha yajñascha, swadhyayastapa arjavam. This is Gita, chapter 16, text 1. What does Krishna say? He says, become fearless on this path. Don't worry whether people are going to ridicule you when you distribute books, or they're going to ignore you when you distribute books, or whether they're going to purchase the books, they're going to accept Krishna consciousness. Don't worry. Just be nimitta matram bhava savyashachi. Just as His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu says, just take that first step and step out of your house. Just hit the road. That's the first thing. Become fearless. Krishna says, if you do that, if you become fearless as a preacher or as a book distributor, sattva samshuddhi, I will clean up your consciousness. You do your duty and I'll do mine. Then Krishna continues, Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi. Don't forget to read those books. As His Holiness Sacinandana Maharaj said, it's important to give out, but it's also, just like outreach is important, in-reach is important. It's important to reach within us, read, and then give it out. So Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi, very important for preachers and book distributors to read it themselves. And then when they do that, look what Krishna says right here, nectarian words for a book distributor, Danam. Krishna says, what you read, what you gain, give it in charity. Give these books out. And Krishna says, that's yajna. That's the sacrifice in Kali Yuga. And if you do that, Krishna says, tapa, that's the greatest austerity. Arjavam, your life will become simple. Krishna talks about that in the Bhagavad Gita. So dear devotees, so much can be said. Time is always short. One lifetime is short when we speak about preaching and book distribution. But I just want to add one little beautiful Sankirtan story before we wrap up for tonight and today. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj says a very beautiful story that one man came, one person, he came to the New Vrindavan temple. And the temple management told Radhanath Maharaj to take the devotee around for to have darshan of the deities and to have a nice, wonderful view of the temple. So Maharaj was taking this person, absolutely fresh, brand new, clean slate, as you call it. He's walking for the first time into the temple, and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was introducing him to different deities and the process of bhakti. And the person said, well, I know about all this. I've read about these deities and I know about this, and I even chant. Maharaj said, do you chant 16 rounds? He said, yes, I chant 16 rounds. Maharaj said, what mantra do you chant? He said, I chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. So Maharaj said, okay, where did you get that mantra from? He said, oh, long story. I was once at a laundromat and I was eating a watermelon. And I finished the watermelon. I tried throwing the peels of the watermelon, the remains of the watermelon into the trash. And when I put it into the trash, there was something in that trash. I put my hand in and it was a Bhagavad Gita as it is. So I've been reading the book continuously for the last 3 years. And that's where I got the mantra from. I've never met a devotee. I've never heard tapes. I've never gone to an ISKCON temple, but I just read it as Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And that's how I chant my 16 rounds. And dear devotees, he was a welder, someone who does welding by profession. And guess what? He became the welder for the TOVP project for ISKCON Mayapur, coming from a book that was put in a trash can at a laundromat. That's how these, ticking time bombs, as Prabhupada called them, these books are creating viplava, revolution in the lives of one and all. So thank you so much for having me in this discussion. I feel honored and privileged. Coming from Mumbai, where I was born and brought up, I have been very closely connected to the lotus feet of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj's book distribution team from ISKCON Juhu. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, I got my first book distribution certificate from His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who used to arrange under the age of 10, under the age of 15, under the age of 20 book distribution competitions. And from then on up to now, preaching and book distribution in the beautiful, wonderful family of Srila Prabhupada's followers and well-wishers. I feel very honored and blessed and privileged in my life. So thank you, His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu, His Holiness Sacinandana Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, and each one of you for inspiring me to be here and actually reminding me of what the essence is. I just try to speak for myself. If there were mistakes, please kindly forgive me. And if there was something that inspired, it's just coming from Srila Prabhupada and our predecessor acharyas. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa
His Grace Amarendra Prabhu ki jai. Prabhu, if anybody was sitting in a dwelling and there was any roof on their house, that roof has now been blown off by the power of your speech today. So insightful and beautifully woven. It's a thing of beauty. Thank you for your devotion and artfulness in presenting Krishna consciousness. So meaningful.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank
so
you.
We've come to an end of another one of our Super Sundays, and it has certainly been super. We have details about a yajna will be on the 25th of December. If that date sounds familiar, it's Christmas Day. We wanted to include Lord Jesus Christ in this marathon as well this year. So we'll be having a special yajna to offer names of all the people who have given towards the marathon this year, and everybody who's participated. They'll all be mentioned at the yajna, and the details will be announced soon. We're just arranging it in India, but keep that on your list. It's something they can use as you distribute books. I also want to say that if anybody's getting feeling like, oh, it's too late for me to get involved right now to make a pledge. No, it's not. We'll remember the Katvanga principle. Even in 1 second, you can do something. And we already heard today that even if you do the smallest service to Krishna, although he's an unlimited ocean, he remembers every drop of what we do. It gets recorded in your book. We've heard of all the great benefits of doing this. So please make a pledge. Your pledge is your wedge. It's what opens up for us individually a place in Lord Chaitanya's movement. When we pledge to do something, write it down on paper, organize your family, your community, get books, put them in your car, put them in your home, put them in front of the refrigerator, tell everyone they can't eat until they're gone. And just do what you can in the time we have left. A lot of devotees each doing a little bit goes a long way, and that's what we can do. So I'll finish with a quote from Srila Prabhupada, who in 1976 said, "This book distribution is the most important task in our society. Therefore, I'm giving so much stress and I'm working so hard on this because this is my life and soul, according to the order of my Guru Maharaj. And by his grace, it is to some extent successful. And I took it seriously. I take it seriously still now. That is my life and soul. I never tried in India to construct big temples, or even in your country, we didn't. I never tried, but I was selling personally books. That is the history. Sometimes they are criticizing, what kind of sannyasi? He is doing book business." So Prabhupada also extended himself to all of us. He said, kindly help me in this. And this is the greatest fortune to be able to hold on to this. We've heard about the benefits to everyone, those who receive, those who engage in this. And it's very heartfelt that all of you joined today, and all that are listening elsewhere. This will go down in history as a time when the Krishna consciousness movement inserted itself into a world bent on destroying itself. And let us incrementally increase the dosage that's going into the intravenous injection that we're giving to the world, and try to turn the world around. What do you think, dear devotees? Possible? Jai. Thank you to all the Sankirtan leaders. Wouldn't be possible for everyone painstakingly taking the trouble to organize your community, and for who are all staying in touch with one another through our international organization. Thank you especially to Shamohini, who tirelessly helps to put all these on, contacts people all over the world. Amazing service. She never sleeps. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Panchatattva, Shri Gaurnitai, Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Lakshmi Nrsingadev. If you so desire, please empower our global team to distribute books all over the world in such quantities as it will go down in history, that for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, we were able to turn the world around from its suicide course and bring them back to the devotional service at your lotus feet. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this prayer in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Kunti Vaishnavini ki jai, Gaur Premanande Haribol, do huge. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Enthusiastic.
Hare Krishna.